So maybe you saw an interview with Joel, or maybe you've watched a bunch of his YouTube videos, maybe you've even read his book. And now you're looking at property that you can homestead on, so you can do pastured poultry as well, raise them up and sell them and support your homestead. It's not going to happen. The reality is, here in Canada, if you want to raise pastured poultry, cows, pastured pigs, anything like that for meat and be able to sell it to someone else, it's actually against the law in most cases. So let's take a look at why you're not going to be Joel Salatin, besides the fact that he's already him and you're you. See, Joel has certain advantages over us Canadians, some being location, others being population, costs, legislation. There's a wide variety of things that kind of make that property and make Joel and make that farm what it is compared to what you're able to do here in Canada. So the first thing you're obviously going to need is the land, somewhere to be able to raise the pasture poultry. However, down in Virginia, where Polyface is located, the average acre sells for about $4,000. Now, if you're in Canada and located in Ontario, where a lot of the population is, the average acre went for about $12,000 there. And even if we do the exchange from US to Canadian, that's still a lot more than what it costs in Virginia for the average acre. Now, let's say we move out of Ontario into another region. One of the cheapest regions to move to is actually out east in, say, New Brunswick. And the average acre there goes for about $2,300, $2,300. So a lot cheaper than both Virginia and Ontario. Now we're talking averages again here. So if you're closer to the city, obviously the land price is going to be a lot more compared to the further you are away from the city. However, you want to remember that if you're doing this and setting up the pasture poultry to be able to sell to clients, you want more population. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere and trying to do this, it's going to be a lot harder if you were, say, located closer to the city and have a lot of population and a lot of client base that you're able to tap into. So with the higher population density of an area, obviously you're going to have more clientele. If we look at, say, where Polyface is located down in Virginia and do a little rough math, they've got a population of almost 2.5 million people within close driving distance. So I took a look around and found a property in Red Rock, New Brunswick, somewhere that, you know, is a bit out of the way, a bit distant from towns, kind of like, you know, where Polyface is in Virginia, and looked like an ideal location. It was for sale, not that expensive. It was like 108 acres for $700,000. So it would be something that most people who own a home, say in the city or major town in Canada, could afford to move from and move to. However, the population within a good driving distance there is only about 135,000 people. So what you have is one area that has almost 2.5 million clients versus 135,000 clients. One of those areas is going to do much better at selling their products. And there's also the weather to be considered. It's not that big of a difference. There's a few degrees difference in those two areas, say Swoop, I believe it's called Swoop, Virginia, compared to, say, Red Rock, New Brunswick. But that's kind of manageable. You know, you can do greenhouses, high tunnels, long tunnels, high tunnels, you know, areas where you can keep your chickens indoors like that for the winter instead of using the chicken tractors. However, that kind of gets us into another problem, is where to house the chickens. In Canada, and I believe it's across Canada, not just New Brunswick, where I found the legislation that says housing for chickens must be in a secure area to prevent predators from getting them, protect them from diseases, as well as protect them from the elements outside, which means you're almost going to have to legally house chickens in a barn instead of in chicken tractors. However, you might be able to get around that. And there are some other factors to consider. Municipal bylaws, county bylaws, provincial bylaws, regulations like that may limit how many chickens you're able to keep on a property. And again, how you house them, what other facilities you need in place to look after them. Biosecurity measures, water, environmental impact, that sort of thing. But say you get through all that and you found the perfect spot, you're ready to go, you got around using the barn, the housing for the chickens, you're gonna do pasture poultry, and even with all that, you figure, say the population in the place you found is gonna be good enough to supply demand for your products. Now we get into another situation where one of the things Polyface is able to do that we aren't able to do here is they process their chickens on their own farm. They've designed a system that meets government regulations in their area. In Canada, unfortunately, we have to transport all our animals to a government-approved facility and have them process the animals. So looking at that and looking at the whole system and setup and how you want to proceed on making extra money doing pasture poultry on your farm in Canada, unfortunately, you have things against you that Polyface doesn't. You have some bigger obstacles to overcome than they do. Now, that being said, if you're going to follow Joel's practices and raise chickens for yourself, then you'll have no problem whatsoever. Now, it would be nice if provinces and Canada would change the regulations to make it easier for us homesteaders and farmers to be able to get our meat to market. There's friends and family who would want to buy the meat, want to buy the milk, want to buy other products like that from us. However, again, we're not allowed to sell it to them. So relaxing some of those regulations and maybe bringing in some new ones that work for everybody to be able to make that transition happen would be so ideal. And again, this isn't saying that you can't practice what he's doing. You can, it's going to be harder. And also with that is take some of his examples, take some of his practices and teachings and that sort of stuff and implement it into your own homestead too if it works for you. Not all homesteads are the same, not all environments are the same, so you have to kind of tailor things that meet your need. So with all that said, what I'd suggest is getting down here, hit this video up as well, give it a watch about how to make your homestead work with a full-time job.